Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Matter of Opinion. I'm your boy Walls P,
And I'm your girl, Erica.
and today we got a very interesting live discussion that we're gonna have on the panel. And it's about the crazy mass shooting that happened in Nashville at, you know, a Christian private school. Now, with this shooting, a lot of people, especially the trans community, is getting a lot of pushback. They're fearing retaliation for everything that's going on. And then you have people who are against guns are calling for more stricter rules, for gun control. Now, Erica P, I know you was discussing about like they've been talking about this since like back in 2019 where the two been going at each other. So I guess break this down for us
Okay,
on.
so it looks like this was a law that was passed in 2022,
Mhm.
just in regards to like the transgender rights. But it also looked like a segment of the transgender rights was also in conjunction with women's rights and in regards to like gun violence and other types of violences. So it looks like the bill itself went back and forth going, "Hey, how do we distinguish between who needs to be covered through the women's rights bill?" But I never even realized there are trans rights that are attached to the women's rights bill. And they did that in conjunction for some years now. Like every few years they go in, update it a little bit, take some stuff out, add some stuff back in, because you have to think about it. When you think of women's rights, you also have to think of trans women's rights because it's not always categorized as the same as women's rights, especially if they're self-identifying as transgender, but they didn't go through the full surgery. Not everybody is going to be 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, and not everybody going to be 105 pounds and 5 foot two. So, I get trying to have wording for those kind of bills are very hard to distinguish, because you also don't want people abusing the rules either.
Mhm.
But it looks like, just in general, like there's always been talks of transgender rights, women's rights, and in conclusion with gun rights, where that's a big issue. Like I never realized, gun rights, like I know gun rights are an issue. I know I'm someone who's fearful of all weapons, so I would want, the strictest of the strict rules out there. But you also have to take into account people who they have the right to bear these arms. So because they have the right to bear these arms, they also don't want the strictest of rules, especially if you're using your weapon for hunting or other things, and not just, utilizing your weapon to cause harm to someone else.
Now, one thing to focus on is that this attack was targeted to a private elementary school in Nashville, Tennessee. You had 6 victims, 3 children and 3 adults, and those are Evelyn. I forgive me if I butcher it. Evelyn Dykes, Hallie Scruggs, and William Kenny, all 9 years old. And then you had the adult victims, who is Cynthia Peaks, 61, Catherine Kuntz, 60, and Mike Hill. Those were the victims. Now, it's also reported that she had a manifest, because this was a targeted hit, but not too much is said about the manifest. Um, Let me play this video about with the police chief that actually was speaking on this manifest. So This week. I need to find the right damn clip right here. Off the bat though, for you, who would you like? Do you look at more gun control, or do you look at, you know, an attack on the trans community?
Okay, so I'm gonna look at it as more on gun control. And the reason is you don't know when these guns were purchased. You don't know how long this person has had these guns. And you also don't know how long this person has identified as being in that particular community, as being transgender. So I don't
Mhm.
know if you are, I don't know what kind of training you have with these guns. I don't know how many of these guns you got prior to you transitioning. I don't know. And those are all questionable things for me. But I see a shooter as a shooter regardless. So I'm not saying it's a trans person, a black person, a Spanish person. A shooter is a shooter regardless to me. So I don't care who is utilizing it. I feel like if you're somebody and you are not mentally stable, I feel like you should not have a weapon. If you're under doctor's care, you should not have a weapon.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if you have a weapon prior to you being under doctor's care, then guess what? I feel like you need to make it known and your weapons need to be relinquished until you are back stable. That's just my take on it because I feel like having a weapon is you have to have the utmost responsibility for it. It's like anything else. You have this license to utilize this. That means you need to be going through the training. That means there has to be some kind of mental checks put in place to make sure that the person at the opposite end of the said weapon is competent.
All
So
right.
I feel like
I'm,
that's the biggest issue.
I'll get into my discussion as far as like who to blame and stuff like that, but let me clip to this video about the manifest. I didn't look at this video, so hopefully it has nothing. Oh, let me
It's a warning.
wrong video. All right. While I'm looking it up, I'll go into my diatribe. Okay. The way I see it is you can't just, yeah, I believe wholeheartedly the trans community is gonna get blowback from this. And the reason being is strictly because this was a attack on a Christian school. So being the fact that it's an attack on a Christian school and a lot of the ideologies as far as Christianity and stuff like this is giving a lot of pushback to the trans community, transgender rights, and all of this stuff. So on the surface, it definitely looks like, hey, this was a planned attack and everything like that. Um, so yeah, I believe there's gonna be pushback in that sense. But on the flip side, it's like, how can we just turn around and just put the blame all on trans? Why can't it just be on this individual that went rogue? Case in point, because this is making a big story and big rounds about, oh, the trans community, and you got people who are pro guns are saying, hey, this is not a gun issue, it's an attack on, trans fighting back, so to speak. But when you look at a case like Peyton Gentron, who killed 10 black people during a shooting at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York, back in May of 2022, one can look at that and say, well, that's a bunch of white people now going to attack black folks. One can make that argument. Or Salvador Rolando Ramos, the same month, May of 2022, did a mass shooting at the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. one can say, hey, that's a Hispanic person or whatever that's basically targeting little kids, so to speak. So we got to be mindful of Spanish or Hispanic people. Or even look at the DC sniper, John Allen Muhammad, and his son Lee Boyd Malvo. Their first victims was a 21-year-old cashier by the name of Kenya Nicole Cook and her aunt Issa Nichols. Why were they targeted? Because it's being reported that Issa Nichols was a good friend of his wife who was encouraging his wife to get to divorce him. So should we say that black people are targeting people who are pushing for their spouse to be divorced? You get what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, you can't just take one narrative and try and put a blanket picture on everybody of that community. That's not right. I don't think that is right. So, with that being said, I can't put the blame on trans community. I can put the blame on this individual, but I do agree there need to be more steps taken for gun control. The reason why I say that is because this was a case where these guns were legally purchased. It's not a case like they found stuff on the street. I mean, they bought guns off the street or anything like that. They legally purchased these guns. So if they legally purchased these guns, then we're gonna need stronger gun control, in my opinion. With that being said, people turn around and say, "Well, you could buy the guns on the streets." Yeah, it's a possibility that you could buy the guns on the streets illegally, but there's more of a chance of you purchasing a gun from an undercover cop, or something going wrong in the process of you trying to purchase these illegal guns. So I definitely think we need stronger gun control. And another thing to point out too is that I believe that this year so far it's been over 130 shootings in schools. No, 129, I believe, shootings in schools. So it's like if we have and we're what in about to hit April, that's a lot of freaking shootings for schools. So we need to basically protect our kids. And if you're telling me in a lot of these cases, these guns were bought from places, and like you said, the shooter had some kind of mental health issue, so to speak, why aren't there more checks and balances for these people to acquire these weapons? So
But think about what you said though. That's the school shootings itself. That's not telling you how many schools were on high alert because of reports of potential school shootings. Those things are not what's being reported either. So if you're talking at least 129 of them, that means you
mhm,
probably had more than 129 attempts that were squashed. Two, you have to think about it. A lot of times with just, with laws in general, especially with gun control laws, you have to be either medically diagnosed unstable, and the courts have to know that for you to be for them to do anything. You can't just be under doctor's care. The other
mhm,
thing too is you have to also have, there's people that get what do you call it, when the court takes over their livelihood.
mhm,
So like it has to be all of that. So you have to be judicially committed to a mental institution. You have to be placed under a conservatorship with by reasons of mental defect just to get your weapons confiscated. And think about it. You're talking this person is in Tennessee. That's the Tennessee law.
mhm.
You can't just say that, hey, this person has a mental illness, because that's not grounds for a police to confiscate somebody's weapons. So to me, that's hard. You have to be to the extreme for the police to even step in.
Heck, you got
Make
some
that
states
make
where
sense.
you got even some states where if you're a convicted felon, you still can open carry. But there there's here's the video of the police chief, I guess, talking about manifest. Doesn't really give too much information on it, which kind of sucks, but this is what this gentleman had to say.
In the manifesto, there's several different writings about other locations. There were locations, there was talks about the school. There was a map of the school, a drawing of how potentially she would enter and the assaults that would take place. It's quite a bit of writing to it. I have not read the entire manifesto. Our team and the FBI has been working on this.
So not much really clarification, but we do know that this was planned and targeted. Now, not to say that this person being a transgender did not play a role in the attack. That I agree with 100%. I believe this person being a transgender definitely played a role in strategically attacking this Christian school. But even if that's the case, right, I would gather that if you had a problem, it would have been with the adults, so to speak. It's not going to be with 9-year-old kids. What is 9-year-old kids going to do as far as like you having a problem with them? Now, it is saying that these people were attacked randomly. That's what they're reporting. But at the end of the day, why would you do this to 9-year-old kids out of all the victims, people who like they're innocent? I mean, it's heinous the fact that you killed these people anyway because of your ideologies. That's what I'm assuming. I don't know if that's the case. My opinion is your ideologies made you go and kill and target these people in the school. But why would you involve 9-year-old kids in your rage? That's the part right there.
Yeah, that's the hard part. But you also have to think about it. Tennessee is also one of the states that has, legislation that's coming to the forefront. It's been
Mhm.
up for voting for the last few weeks about them banning gender affirming medical treatment for transgender children.
That's a good
And
point. Good point.
they also put in regulations on drag performances. So these are things that are recent. So you got to think about it. That could have been a trigger for all of this too. You don't know how much of that resonated with that person.
That is true because when you feel like your rights are being stolen, like taken from you, so to speak, it make people lash out. What do you think happened on January 6th?
Correct.
That was people feeling that their rights were being taken from them. So that's what they did. Let's look at this news article that paint a pretty picture of everything that took place.
Video released by Nashville police shows 28-year-old Audrey Hale stalking the halls of the Covenant Christian School armed with an assault rifle. Hale first entered the building by shooting the glass out of a side door. Police say Hale fired shots on the first and second floor of the school, randomly looking for victims. 6 people were killed, 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults, a teacher, a custodian, and the head of the school.
Metro Police!
More dramatic video released by police showing their swift response to the shooting. These are the 2 Nashville police officers recording their search on body camera video. They move rapidly, searching every room. This is the moment right before the shooter comes into view and is killed by police. We're stopping the video here. Startling new information about the shooter. Hale was a former student at the school. Police say they lived with their parents and were under doctor's care for an emotional disorder. Police say Hale legally purchased 7 guns at 5 area gun shops, and that Hale's parents thought their child had only 1 gun and sold it.
They were under the impression that when she sold the 1 weapon that she did not own anymore. As it turned out, she had been hiding several weapons within the house.
Police say the victims are random and not targeted. They still don't have a motive for the massacre. Audrey Hale was transgender, assigned female at birth but used male pronouns on social media. Transgender advocates are quick to point out Hale's identity should not be politicized or used to fuel discrimination.
My fear is that folks will use this incident to continue to weaponize laws and legislations against transgender people.
Here's my question, because they're saying, hey, this was she used male pronouns and stuff like this, but they're referring to this person as her through the whole thing. Was it just a case of you just use pronouns on social media, but in your everyday life you weren't doing so? That's the question that I wonder.
You have to think about it though. Most of the times they're going to refer you to what you look like, usually. So
Mhm.
if you look like a her, a lot of times you're going to be referenced as a her unless you say anything different. So that's the other thing. If you're using he and him pronouns online, then yes, he, that person is probably personifying I am transitioning, and these are the terms that I want to be identified as. But the problem is, think about it. At this point, the cops on scene are going to be like, hey, it was a female. They're looking at body parts,
Mhm.
they're looking
Mhm.
at the persona. You could dress manly, and they're still going to go, hey, this person has these body parts, and this is what we're identifying this person as. So, yes, when you have news reports, they're going to self identify based off of what they saw. If somebody's not correcting them, they're not really wrong because they're identifying what they see. But if that person was here to talk for themselves, they would correct them.
I agree. Now, one thing I want to say is that the police did do a phenomenal job because they responded a lot better than the Uvalde shooting, where it stand out like the cops were there for like God knows how long, and there was 19 victims and everything like that. But I want to read this article because there is some significant differences that happened when it came to the Uvalde, Texas situation as opposed to this one. So let me pull this up. So right here, the title is "The Nashville Shooting Response Draws Comparison to Uvalde, but there are key differences." So I'll start from right here. Um, well, I'll start from the top. The release of the police body camera video on Tuesday from the deadly shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville the day before showed a deliberate and rapid response, one that resulted in officers shooting and killing the assailant within minutes of arriving. It also prompted immediate comparison to the police response to the school shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas last year, in which more than an hour passed between the arrival of the officers when they ultimately killed the gunman. But the situation but the situations that officers confronted upon arriving at each school were not the same. In each instance, officers rushed to the scene, immediately entered the school building minutes after the shooting began. In both cases, the officers were first on the scene, rushed towards the location of the gunfire, based on the video released from both shooting scenes. But from the point, but from that point, key differences are apparent from the available video. In the Nashville shooting, officers found the assailant firing on the second floor in an open area, appeared to have a clear shot and fired. The assailant was killed about 14 minutes after the shooting was first reported, according to the police spokesman. In Uvalde, officers located the classroom where they believed the gunman had been firing just 3 minutes after he entered the building, but the door was closed. They approached the door and tried to get a view of the gunman, but could not. As they did so, he began firing through the closed door in the direction with an AR-15 style rifle, striking two officers with shrapnel and preventing them from seeing the position in a pair of classrooms full of students. The officers in Uvalde fell back at that point as the gunfire paused, shifted tactics to begin treating the gunman as barricaded and no longer an active shooter. From there, hundreds of officers gathered at the school. The gunman was eventually killed by a small team that entered the classroom with ballistic shields. So that is a huge difference. Now, people do say, hey, the tactics that they used and everything, it was a long standoff. I get it, because when you looked at the video, you saw officers sitting in the hallway, and there's been a significant breakdown saying how they handled it poorly. But that initial scenario where the door was closed and the gunman started shooting with the AR-15 and they didn't know who was in the classroom, whatever the case may be, that part, I believe, was handled accordingly. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. And the reason for that is you don't know if it's one kid in that classroom or if there's 25. If there were 25, that means there are 25 targets that the police could have potentially hit. It's one thing if you hit your target and let's say something bounced off and hit somebody else by accident. It's something completely different if you miss your target and you hit an innocent bystander. That means the police is, they're on the hook for that. Because you can't, with good conscience, not want to hold them accountable when they clearly didn't have a good view of it.
Agreed. Now, I want to switch over to Tucker Carlson on Fox News, because he posted a video, and he had a news segment that basically was pointing the fingers at transgender. So we'll listen to this clip and then break this down.
Pistol. We now have horrifying body cam footage from within the school. So unsettling, we're not going to show it to you. But somehow we can't see the manifesto in which the killer explains why she killed. Why is that? It's not accidental. Well, you know exactly why it is. Because it would make the obvious undeniable. The trans movement is targeting Christians, including with violence. Most Christian leaders in this country don't want to admit that. Admitting it might force them to take deeply unfashionable positions. But it is true, and anyone who's paying attention knows that it's true. And so, like most true things at this point, it is officially suppressed.
What's your take on that?
I feel like you have to suppress it for now because it's still an active investigation. You can't throw everything out there when you're still trying to put the pieces together yourselves.
I agree. The one thing I will say is I want them to publicize this manifesto so we could see what was going through the mind of the actions of the shooter. To me, I believe that's very important. Here's one thing I will say, because I feel like if actions were taken quicker, much more quick, that this probably could have been prevented. And the reason why I'm saying this is because they interviewed a woman that knew the shooter. And where is it? This person also contacted this person. Let me post it up. Contacted this person who they're gonna interview on Facebook, and this is what the message said. Let me read it out because I know it's kind of small. It says, so basically that post I made, I guess she made a post earlier and included the person that she's speaking to. So she said, so basically that post I made on here about you, that was basically a suicide note. I'm planning to die today. This is not a joke. You'll probably hear about me on the news after I die. This is my last goodbye. I love you. See you again in another life. Audrey Patton, in parentheses. Then it goes into, Audrey, you have so much more in life to live. I pray God keeps and covers you. She replies, I know, but I don't want to live. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to upset you or get attention. I just need to die. I wanted to tell you first because you are the most beautiful person I've ever seen and known all my life. My family doesn't know what I'm about to do. One day this will make more sense. I've left more than enough evidence behind, but something bad is about to happen. Forgive me. So, reading from that, this is what makes me want to know exactly what the manifest said, because clearly you left enough evidence. But when they interviewed the friend, This is what she had to say.
More on this tragedy. I want to introduce you to Audrey Patton, who's a former middle school teammate of the Nashville shooter. Audrey, first off, we are so sorry for everything that your community is going through. I know you're there in Nashville. Tell me, what was your reaction initially when you heard that a shooting had happened?
I was just, when I heard about a shooting, I didn't even correlate the two. I just know that morning I had received that type of message, and I tried to respond, encouraging words, but then I was just like, I screenshotted it to my dad, and I was like, Dad, should I say something? And if so, what do I do? How do I respond to something like this? And he was like, call the suicide prevention, and then we went from there. Well, I went from there.
Right, and so tell me from the beginning here, I mean, you received a message through social media from the shooter, saying what?
She said that, would you like for me to read it verbatim?
Sure.
Okay. All right, she said, so basically that post I made on here about you, that was basically a suicide note. I'm planning to die today. This is not a joke. You'll probably hear about me on the news after I die. This is the last goodbye. I love you. See you again in another life, Audrey. And then It's more to it.
I mean, that's horrifying. And that message came to you at 9:57 in the morning. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you told your dad just a few minutes later?
I screenshotted it to him.
And then you called the suicide prevention hotline?
Yes.
And you're taking all these actions, and you were taking them quite quickly. Did you feel like you were doing it fast enough at the time?
Yeah. I was just doing what I was told on the phone.
Right. And so what did the suicide prevention hotline tell you?
They asked me, was I the person that needed the assistance? And if not, they would need the person that needed the process or assistance to be on the phone. And then they suggested me to call the sheriff's department.
So they pointed you to the sheriff's department, which you also called them, right? Around 10:14.
Let me just confirm that for you. Just gonna confirm at sheriff's office at 10:13 a.m.
At 10:13. This is also the same time that police are responding to calls of shots fired.
Okay. So if that was you that received that message, would you have called the suicide prevention hotline, or you would have called 911?
See, this is the thing, though. You don't know who to call. There's usually no real protocol for stuff like that. There isn't. You usually try to call that person and see if they'll answer you first. Because if they answer you, hopefully you could get to them. But like she said, she had to ask her dad. That means most people don't know what to do in those instances. And you're right. I call 911. They're going to ask me, where's the emergency? So 911 may or may not be able to help me. You call the suicide prevention because that's what you think. You call suicide prevention to see what the steps are that need to be done. She just didn't know her steps it was going to be too late regardless. She didn't know.
Yeah, I got to agree, because looking at the conversation, she never said anything about she was going to shoot anybody or anything. Basically, everything she said was pointing towards suicide.
Correct.
So that I can agree. But I know going forward, if I see somebody that send me a message like that, I'm calling 911 and then the suicide hotline or whatever I could do, because you never know what people are capable of.
But the problem is, even think about it though. You call 911, where would you send them? You send them to the person's house. She wasn't there. She was already at the school. So that's the problem too. You have to figure out where they're at to be able to send help.
I'm not too sure how far she lived from the school, but that would have at least had police like kind of like engaged, so to speak. So do you think the response time would have been a bit quicker since they were already, because it's like, yo, this person is saying they're gonna kill themselves, whatever. Like they seem on the edge. I don't know what they're capable of. Would that alert cops to take that kind of seriously and be engaged?
See, that's the problem though. You don't know. It really depends on where you live at. Because think about it, if I call 911, it's more of a welfare check. That's
Mhm.
so
Okay.
because it's a welfare check, they may get to it when they get to it because it may not be the immediate, hey, we hear gunshots already, or hey, there's a fire. Think about it. 911 is for emergencies. Everything else, she was right. They told her to contact the sheriff's office. They didn't tell you to call 911. They told you to call the office.
Agreed. One person who's getting some flack is the president, Joe Biden. They questioned him about the shooting, and he kind of made a joke, and one can pass it as being insensitive. So I want you to, I'm gonna run the clip and you let me know, do you feel like this was insensitive, this was the wrong place to joke around about something like this? I want your analysis.
That Christians were targeted in Nashville school shooting. Believe that Christians were targeted.
I have no idea.
Josh Foley believes they were. What do you say to that?
Well, I probably don't then.
Probably don't.
No, I'm joking. No, I have no idea.
Do you think that was an insensitive joke right there?
To be honest, I don't really think he knew what they were talking about. Because you got to think about it. If he's doing other things, that means he's not getting the information right away. What they
Yeah,
did is
but
they baited him by saying so and so agrees. You have to think about it. The person that they were baiting him with is somebody who he doesn't see eye to eye with. So
but
that's
still
why it
though,
came over joking like that.
but still though, as a president, why would you joke in something that's like a sip? Because people are taking this very seriously. So why would you even joke? Like you could have said something like, look, I don't know the full details right now. Once I get the details, I'll let you know if I can agree or disagree with his analysis.
Correct. And I would be fine with him saying that. The comment right now, I don't like that he was being joking. I don't. But I also think because these people are catching him after he's leaving and doing something else, I don't think he really understood and heard what the person was asking him to begin with.
Put it like this. If that was your child that was a victim in that school and you heard this, would you be pissed off?
Oh, of course.
There you
Because
go.
I feel like you're not taking my circumstance seriously. So yes,
Exactly.
I don't feel like he took it seriously, but I also don't know if he really knew what was going on either.
Still, as the president, that's something, whether you know what's going on or not, if anybody has to be politically correct, that's the man that has to be politically correct. So joking or not, man, that is the wrong time to joke, and you definitely caught an L for that one. So all the vitriol that your man is going to receive or flack from this is well deserved, in my opinion. So before we wrap up this live, I just want to highlight the actions of Melissa Joan Hart. For those who don't know who Melissa Joan Hart is, she's an American actress, producer, and director. She starred in roles in sitcoms like Carissa Explains It All in 1991 to 1994. And I used to watch that show as a kid. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Melissa and Joey, just to name a few. So, she's well out there as far as her career in Hollywood. So this is what she did because she lives in the Nashville area. So she documents the actions that she took when these shootings occurred.
Hey guys, for those of you that know, I live in Nashville, and what's been going on here today, my kids go to school right next to a school where there was a shooting today, and We moved here from Connecticut, where we were in a school a little ways down from Sandy Hook. So this is our second experience with a school shooting with our kids being in close proximity. Luckily, we are all okay, but my husband and I were on our way to school for conferences, and luckily our kids weren't in today, and we helped a class of kindergartners across a busy highway that were climbing out of the woods, that were trying to escape the shooter situation at their school. So we helped all these tiny little kids cross the road and get their teachers over there, and we helped a mom reunite with her children, and I don't know what to say anymore. It is just enough is enough, and just pray for the families.
That was remarkable that she did. And I just want to say, as far as her children experiencing something like that in close proximity, not once but twice, I really hope it do not mess those children up. And I'm pretty sure they taken steps for therapy and stuff like that just to help the children. But I pray this do not psychologically. I know it's gonna play some kind of psychological damage to these children, but I pray that they're able to work through it, because that is a lot for children to go to. And it's to the point it could make those children think school is not a safe place, and make them disengage as far as going to school because they're so fearful for their life. But definitely kudos to her and her husband for taking those actions to reunite them kids with their parents and do whatever they can to get to safety. So big kudos to you.
Look, I appreciate that because think about it. Most people don't know what's going on around them. And
Hmm.
she acted. She saw
Hmm.
something that didn't look right. She got out and she helped. So to me,
Agreed.
that's phenomenal. But on the flip side of that, too, is the one thing that I do fear is how about that's a drill that the kids have to go through now? They go through active shooter drills, which is
Hmm.
weird because growing up, we did not go through those kind of drills. And this is something part of the everyday drills. You do a fire drill, you do a drill for that as well now, which to me is it's wild because those are
Yeah.
things that you really don't want to have to tell a kindergartner, a preschooler, a eighth grader. But the problem is it can happen in elementary school, it can happen in middle school, it could happen in high school. So everybody has to be prepared. It's more about being prepared and not having to use it than not being prepared and have to.
Agreed. So my question to you before we wrap this up is, should the trans community fear retaliation for this Nashville shooting since the shooter was identified as transgender?
And my heart of hearts, I want to say no, they shouldn't, but I feel like it's going to give a person a reason anyway. If you already have a person that's on the edge about that community, they are going to utilize that to victimize it.
Hmm.
But I want to say no, but I can't right now.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to say yes, the fear for retaliation is weird. I mean, is real. It shouldn't be that way because I don't see you take one person who goes rogue and make them the poster child of said group of people or movement or whatever the case may be. I look at it as this was a person that was rogue and had whatever issues going on with that school or whatever, and they act upon it. But as far as to attack a whole community based off that, I don't agree with it. Because, like I said, you had a lot of shooting situations where people attacked a group of people, and it was never that person who was the shooter was never the poster boy for whatever community they represent to attacking a specific other community. So if we don't do that in other instances, we cannot do that in this instance. It is not right. That's my opinion on it. And the thing is, once you start attacking this community based off the actions of one person going rogue, that's just going to cause a bigger divide, and that's not good for us. That's not good for our communities. It's not good in any shape or form. So hopefully, like you said, I'm hoping there's no retaliation. But as where I stand, I believe that more gun control is needed in the country. So that's where I stand. Anything else that you want to add on, Erica P?
Nope. But well said.
All right. That's gonna do it for this Improp Live. Those who were there in the laying in the cut, we appreciate you being here, you know, joining us on this live stream. I know it was impromptu. We just put it together. There was no really alerts, sent out alerts and notifications as it was coming to, like what, 10 minutes prior. But other than that, this was an impromptu live that we just wanted to discuss this, you know, this horrible shooting that took place and how we feel as far as the trans community fearing retaliation and should they be blamed for it. Let us know what you think in the comment section. We would love to hear your take on it. If you want to follow us on our other social media platforms, the links are in the description. That's going to do it for this episode of Matter of Opinion. Like this video, share this video. I'm your boy, Walls P.
And I'm your girl, Erica.
And we will catch you, ladies and gentlemen, on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.